Okay. Badram karnebihi shrunyama devaha badram pashyema akshabihi ryajatraha sthirairangayir tushtuvam sastanubihi vyashema devahitam yadayuhu swastinah indro vridrashravah swastinah pusha vishwavedaha swastinah tarksho arishtanemihi swastino brihaspatiir dadatu यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वदाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So this is a second session on Mandukya Upanishad. So just wanted to make a small correction there. It is not Mandukya Upanishad. It is Mandukya Upanishad. So that's the classic rendering of what this Upanishad actually means. So before we go to the main, I think from now on, any Upanishad that we do, we should always start with a Mangalacharana sloka from one of the Acharyas. Okay, so I have requested Neeta ji to recite the Mandukya Upanishad Bhashyam Mangalacharana sloka. So Neeta ji, please.
Harihi Om. Purnananda Jnana Shakti Swarupam Nityamavyayam Chaturdha Sarva Bhoktaram Vande Vishnum Param Padam.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So that's a beautiful Mangalacharana sloka celebrating, giving the essence of Vishnu, and at the same time it also summarizes the essence of Mandukya Upanishad. So many Mangalacharana slokas that you will see in various bhashyas, basically they'll summarize what the Upanishad is talking about. This is exactly what Acharya is also talking about, and hopefully over the next 2 to 3 months we will understand the gravity of Acharya's verses. What does he mean? Yeah, over the next 3 months. So now the first question, I just want to go back from where we left last week and ask a very basic question. There are 108 Upanishads. We said there are, 10 Upanishads or Daso Upanishads. Now the question is, why Mandukya Upanishad? Why should we start our Upanishad Chintane with Mandukya Upanishad? So you could ask that question, you can challenge that question. Why do you have to start with that? We could have started with, say, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is one of the biggest Upanishads. The answer to that comes from Muktika Upanishad. Okay, so Muktika Upanishad is one of the Upanishads that comes in Shukla Yajurveda. It belongs to the Shukla Yajurveda, and that's called Muktika Upanishad. It's really interesting when you look at the Muktika Upanishad. This is a dialogue between Sri Ram and a dialogue between Hanuman. So this is a conversation that is happening between Ramachandra and Hanuman. They are having a discussion in Muktika Upanishad, okay, where Hanuman is asking Ramachandra, how do I obtain mukti? How do I get moksha? And Lord Ramachandra is actually explaining that in Muktika Upanishad. Okay, so just to kindle up and light up the audience, I just want to ask, in the Vedic pantheon, Hanuman is an incarnation of which devata? So who is going to answer that question?
Vayu.
Vayu?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. So Vayu, okay, Vayu is also called Mukhya Prana. Now, when you look at the Vedic pantheon, number 1 is our Vishnu. Number 2 is Lakshmi. Number 3 is Chaturmukha Brahma, and we usually combine Brahma Vayu as we call them. Chaturmukha Brahma and Mukhya Prana, they come in the 3rd rank. So here is a chap who is 3rd rank in the Vedic pantheon, asking that question to the very first, the topmost person of all of existence, which is Sriman Narayana himself. And he is asking him, what is the route to moksha? What is the route to mukti? And Ramachandra starts this Muktika Upanishad, and he gives an explanation. It's really really interesting because the Muktika Upanishad will actually summarize. You can even find all the list of 118 Upanishads in Muktika Upanishad. It's in a verse form. All the 108 Upanishads are summarized. So in the Muktika Upanishad, Lord Ram, and I've underlined that for you, he says, Mandukeyam ekam evalayam mumukshunam vimuktaye. So he says, Manduka Upanishad is the most important Upanishad that a mumukshu means you and me who are doing this Shastra Abhyasa, this mumukshu, first thing that he needs to learn is he needs to learn about Manduka Upanishad. That mumukshu, that person who reads the Manduka Upanishad and understands this in all its dimensions, he is the person who becomes eligible for moksha. So vimuktaye means liberation, going to Vaikuntha. So here is number one, Narayana himself, who is actually instructing Mukhya Prana, and through Mukhya Prana, he is actually instructing to all of us that if you want to attain mukti or moksha, please start your philosophical journey with Manduka Upanishad. Okay. And then the Upanishad also goes to say, if, for example, after having studied Manduka Upanishad, you still don't have a view, you're a bit confused, you still don't understand everything, then go to the other 10 Upanishads or the Dasho Upanishads. If you don't understand fully the Dasho Upanishads, then go to the 32 in Upanishads, principal Upanishads. Even if that you can't fully understand, then you go to 108 Upanishads to understand what Manduka Upanishad is talking about. Yeah. So that is the importance of Manduka Upanishad in Vedanta and in Vedic philosophy. Not you and me who have decided that, not any of the acharyas who have decided that, but actually Lord Ramachandra himself has said in Muktika Upanishad that that is a foundational Upanishad. So I hope I'm able to impress upon you the importance of Mandukya Upanishad. Now, I put a small box here for those of you who are interested in the nitty-gritties. There are 108 Upanishads, and they are all spread over the various branches. Rig has got 10, Shukla Yajur has got 19, Krishna Yajur has got 32, Sama has got 16, and Atharva has got 31. But among the 31 Atharva Veda, I told you there are only 3 Upanishads that are most important. So who is going to list those 3 Upanishads of Atharva Veda, please?
Remember, you told last week, Madhu. I think we forgot. It was
Yeah.
last week.
Mandu.
Oh, no, there's somebody who can remember, please.
Mundaka, Mandukya, and Prashna Upanishad.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Narayan Ramji. And thank you, Neeta ji, as well. So you also got it right. So there are the 3 principal Upanishads. Mandukya Upanishad, also called Atharvana Upanishad. Then you have Manduka Upanishad. So Atharvana Upanishad is also called Mundaka Upanishad. Then Manduka Upanishad. Then you have Prashna Upanishad. There are 3 Upanishads in Atharva Veda. And our Manduka Upanishad is in the Atharva Veda. Okay. So that gives you an overview as to why Manduka Upanishad is important. So now how does the Manduka Upanishad start? And we've done this before. You always say Harihi Om iti etad aksharam, idang sarvam tasya upavyakyanam bhutabhavat bhavishyaditi, sarvam omkara eva, yachanyat trikalaatitam tadapi omkara eva, sarvam hi etad brahma, ayam atma brahma, so ayam atma chatushpad. So these are the first 2 verses, and I think to cover these first 2 verses probably will take about a month. So we will do justice with those first 2 verses. But I want to also impress upon you what Ramachandra has said is the same thing that Mandukya Upanishad says in the very last verse, which is the 12th verse. Omkara vidito yena samuner na itaro janaha. And it says, he who knows the full meaning of the Omkara is the real Muni. Yeah, and as we discussed last week, we are all aiming to be Munis here. So over the next few months, we will understand every component of the Omkara at least from a scriptural perspective and a philosophical perspective. So let's not forget, unless we have the knowledge base, putting that knowledge base into practice becomes sensible and becomes more interesting. Yeah, you cannot dissociate the knowledge base and putting it into practice. Some people just practice it without even understanding what Omkara is, and some folks just understand the Omkara but don't practice the Om. Yeah, so hopefully we will be able to tie both together. And I have sent you the invite for our external seminar speaker next month. What he is going to do for us is he's going to do the practical aspects of how to do the yoga on Omkara. So hopefully you will join us on the 7th of March, which will again give a practical perspective of the Om. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So how is the structure of the of the Mundaka Upanishad? And again, as I said, before you even get into any philosophical discussions in the Upanishads, you should always thank a few people. Okay, it's like any research paper. When you do a research paper or you write anything, you always acknowledge who has initially contributed to it, where is the knowledge base coming from. Otherwise it's plagiarism, so you can't steal concepts from others. So our Vedic rishis had this concept completely fixed. They would say, even before you do any studies, you have to talk about rishi, you have to talk about devata, and you have to talk about chandas. Okay, rishi is the seer. Who is the seer of the Mundaka Upanishad? And I told you last week, so the rishi is the seer of the Mundaka Upanishad is Varuna himself. Varuna, as you know, is a great devata. In the Vedic pantheon, he is ranked 13. He's such a big guy. In the Vedic philosophy, we take the first 15 ranks. The first 15 ranks, starting from Narayana to Agni. Those are the 15 ranks that we actually use in all our Vedic deliberations. And look at where Varuna is. He's 13. He's way above Narada Muni and he's way above Agni. He's just below Surya and Chandra, who are ranked number 12. Varuna is a big devata. He's ranked number 13. So I'm going to ask a question here. Varuna Devata, he is the Abhimani Devata of what concept in Pindanda and what concept in Brahmanda? So what is
Varuna
the Abhimani Devata in the Brahmanda?
of rain, isn't it? Rain?
Close, Sudarshan. Anybody else?
Water. Water, you mean? Or
Yeah, correct. So he is the Abhimani Devata of water. Yeah, in the Brahmanda. In the Pindanda, what is the Abhimani Devata of?
Taste.
Excellent. So he is the Abhimani Devata of taste, which is a Jnana Indriya, as you know. He is Abhimani Devata of that because it makes sense. For us to get any taste of food, first you have to chew it, then the water, the saliva dissolves it, and then the chemical compounds then go to the taste buds, and then that's how you get the taste sensation. So our philosophers have given great attention to Varuna as the Jnana Indriya, the Abhimani Devata of taste. So this guy, this Varuna, is the rishi. He is the seer, the primary seer of this mantra. And what is this Varuna doing? He is saying these mantras in celebration, in admiration of the Supreme Lord Narayana. Yeah? So that is the overarching stuff. And he is talking about Narayana, who is the Devata here. What forms of Devata, what forms of Narayana is the Devata here? We will come to that next. That's the Vaishwa, Tejasa, Pragna, and Turiya forms of Vishnu, who controls the 4 states of consciousness of the Jivas. So Varuna, who is a Jiva himself, he is subatomic. Yeah, let's not forget that. He is a Kshara Jiva. He is in samsara, like you and me, except that he is a very highly exalted Kshara. We are the lowest of the low. So he is actually praising the Supreme in Mundaka Upanishad. And this Mundaka Upanishad starts with Om iti etad aksharam. Yeah. So this is the very first few words that Varuna Devata is saying in admiration of Lord Narayana or the Supreme Being. So last week we touched upon, so when Varuna has said Om, we have to give it great attention. Why has he started with Om? In fact, not just Varuna in Mundaka Upanishad. If you go to Chandogya, again it is the same. Om iti etad aksharam udgitam upasita. So they all start with Om, most Upanishads. So what does it mean? Why is it a central concept in Vedic philosophy? What is the etymology of Om? What is it? What is the science of Om? So those are all some of the concepts that we need to get. And hopefully in the coming weeks, we will all together understand more about this Om. So before we start into our discussion on Om, I've requested Harish ji to recite the Omkara for us 3 to 5 times. Harish, thank you. Don't know what's up. Harish, are you there? If you're there, please unmute. Okay, looks like Harish has got some technical problems. Was anybody else? Can I ask one of our other friends to recite Om, please?
Madhu, I can chant if you want.
Yeah, please, Sudarshan.
How many times you want? I chanted 3 times. You want?
That's fine, Sudarshan. Thank you very much for that. Just to get us in that wavelength to do deliberations about Om. So the Om is such a complicated word. Yeah, it's a complicated sound. You can call it whatever you want. You want to call it as a sound? I'm happy with it. So it's a sound, it's a word, it's a name of the Supreme, and so on. So Om, as you can look at Om from 8 different dimensions or from 8 different angles at least. And I put that word at least there. And this is for our mundane contemplation. So Om as one word, Om has got, or it's got 2 syllables, or Om that has got 3 syllables, Akara, Ukara, Makara, or Om has 4 syllables, Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, or Om has 6 components, Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, Bindu, Kala, or Om has got 8 components, Nada, Bindu, Kala, Shanta, Atishanta. Okay, so those are all 8 different ways in which Om should be looked at. And when Sudarshan recites Omkara, and in 3 months' time, when we recite Omkara, we should get all these contemplations of what is that understanding from 1 to 8. And when we combine that and then you meditate on Om, then the whole process or philosophical process gets elevated. Okay. Now the 3 components, Akara, Ukara, Makara, has got a specific philosophical significance in Vedanta. How does that link with Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha of Vyahriti? How does that link with Pada 1, Pada 2 of Gayatri, 3 of Gayatri? Purusha Shukta, Varga 1, Varga 2 of Varga 3 of Purusha Shukta, Rig, Yajur, and Samaveda, and all the sounds, how it links. So we will look at all this in the coming weeks and also today. Okay. Now the approach 1. So the first approach and the fundamental approach, or the very initial approach, we discussed this last week. We said Om iti etad aksharam. So we said aksharam. Om iti etad aksharam. Om is a name of this person who is also called akshara. Okay, it is not just a syllable. The akshara there does not mean a syllable. Yeah, remember this is Varuna Devata who is actually contemplating on the Supreme. So the Varuna here is saying, you know that chap who is very close to me. So that word etad is important there. Etad means something that is very, very close. So there are 3 words that are going to appear in the first line of Mandukya Upanishad. Etad, idam, and ayam. Those are the 3 words. Etad means something that's very close. Idam means this. Ayam means this. Okay. So here Varuna, who is a Jiva, and this Narayana is inside him as his Antaryamin. He is looking inside and he is celebrating this Narayana as Aksharam. Om iti etad Aksharam. And we don't have to go too far away for what that aksharam actually means, because you are all experts already on chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, particularly the last 5 verses. So I've requested Ajit and Radhika ji to recite the chapter 16, chapter 15, 16th verse and the first line of the 17th verse, please. Ajit?
Yeah.
द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरक्षाश्चर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि गूढस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः.
Thank you very much, Radhika ji. That was beautiful. So that Bhagavad Gita chapter is very clear who this Akshara is. This Akshara is Vishnu himself or Narayana himself. And not surprisingly, Varuna is saying, you are Akshara. Because if you look at Upanishads, various Upanishads, Akshara comes again and again as a name that celebrates the Supreme. Why? Because the etymology of Akshara we have seen hundreds of times. Akshara, he is indestructible. Akshara, Aksha means Indriyas. So he controls our Indriyas and enjoys this. And A and plus Ksha plus Ra, A and Ksha are letters. We'll come to that a little bit later in three slides from now. Akshnute iti akshara, akshoti iti akshara. The omnipresent being is akshara. Adhikam ksharanti. Adhikam ksharanti means he will give you whatever you want. So those are all some of the etymological meanings of akshara. And in the primary sense, that akshara can mean only the supreme being or Vishnu or Narayana himself. So when Varuna says Om iti etad aksharam, he's telling us this is the basic requirement. When you contemplate on Om, at least be mindful that Om is this akshara, or that Om is this Narayana. So that is the first level or the first stage of contemplation of Om. Now we go to the second approach. The second approach, we did this last week, is what is the root, what is the etymology of Om? And then we said there are two dhatus, avadhatu and uyi dhatu, and we split various meanings. Let's not spend too much time there. Last week I did not tell you about avatiti iti Om. Avati means protect. Yeah. So for example, you have the Shanti mantra, Sahana Avatu. Yeah. Avatu there means may he protect the student and the guru. One of the Shanti mantras you're familiar with. So Avati there means protect. Yeah. Uyate means, Otatvachi means he who has infinite gunas or attributes of, he has infinite auspicious attributes. So that is approach 2 that we did last week. So let's not spend too long on this one, but just this is to lay the foundation for what we are going to discuss today. Okay? So we have done approach 1 and we have done approach 2. Now let's make our pravesha to approach 3. So after Varuna has said, look, you are the akshara, and that you are this and that, and he started off with Om. That Om is also a fascinating word, because Om is an abbreviation. It is not just, it is a name of the Supreme. And as we have done before, when I say name of the Supreme, I actually mean the adjective of the Supreme. Yeah, it's his attributes and its qualities. That is what the sound Om actually signifies. What are all his attributes? So that attributes are all compressed in this Om as an abbreviation. So let us like abbreviation like USA, which is United States of America, UK, United Kingdom, NHS, National Health Service. So we got all these kind of abbreviations that is all around us. Similarly, Om is also an abbreviation. How does that abbreviation evolve? O. So you have these vowels, A, E, U and all that. So two vowels, A and U, when they combine together, they become O in Sanskrit. Okay. So, and then you have Makara, which is a sound, which will come to that next. So A plus U plus M becomes Om. So Om is actually, you split it into 3 components, A, U, M. If that A, U, M is an abbreviation, what is it an abbreviation of? Okay, that is the first question. Yeah. So now what Varuna is telling us is, you can actually now do philosophical journey and inquiry into that. What is that abbreviation? The very first thing it points to you is the word Om gives you a concept of God. Yeah. Let us not kid ourselves. None of us actually know who God is. We do not know. but it can give you a concept of God. How? So let's see how it goes over 2 slides. So you have akara, you have ukara, and makara. So let's take the akara. Is, what does means? It's called nisheda vachakaha. Nisheda vachakaha means negation. Yeah, that we all agree, isn't it? Even in English, you have a before, then it means opposite of something. Yeah. So a generally means negation. So there are three approaches to negation in our Indian languages. Yeah, in most Indian languages, there are three ways of negating something. Say, I will take Kannada, which is my mother tongue. I'll take Kannada, for example, or you can also take other South Indian languages like Tamil, for example. You can say Allah or Illa or Virudha. Allah means not this. Okay. Illa means no. Illa, idu illa, no. Viruddha means opposite. Yeah. So when I say akara, it indicates all three concepts. So now the interesting question is, how am I going to bring that into the concept of God? You will understand this in 5 minutes. Now, in our school, when we teach children, when we teach language, or when we give them knowledge about things in the world, what do we do in our schools? Okay, so we take an object. For example, you will go to the zoo and you will show a giraffe, and you will tell your kid in the pram. We've all done that. So you will say, this is a giraffe. Can you see this long thing? This is the giraffe. So what you are doing when you are teaching kids language or things about the world is, you take an object, then you utter a sound, and then you teach the kids to link the sound to that particular object. And that is how they learn not only the language, but they also know about things in the universe, in the world around them. So the first thing is, you need to have the object in front of you to be able to give a particular sound and get the kids to know what that object actually is. Yeah, does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. But when you want to know about God, the approach is different, because nobody can show this God fellow and say, this is God, his name is Vishnu. Nobody can do that. Can we do that? Can we just go and show Vishnu and say, this is Vishnu? No. And our Vedic philosophers understood that very clearly. Okay. And they said, you know what? If you want to understand God first, you need to start off with a negative approach and then go to a positive approach. Okay. So when I take the A word, first you should know what God is not. So when I want to tell something about God, I would first say, he is not this. He is not a giraffe. He is not a monkey. He is not carrots. He is not a cake. He is not water. He is not earth. He is not Agni. He is not air. He is not space. He is not the Panchabhutas. And you will start, you can talk about this forever. You can say what he is not, we can be good at. Yeah. So that is the first stage of contemplation of the Supreme, is first to understand what he is not. And that is what that Akara is telling us. Yeah. So for example, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is this famous verse, Neti Neti. Yeah, it's a Neti Neti Atma, and it comes in various places. Neti Neti. So that is the very first concept of God, saying Na iti. Okay, iti means this, not this, not this. So you start off, when you want to have a concept of the Supreme, first you have to start by, he is not this, he is not this, he is not that, i.e., he is not anything made of Panchabhutas. Yeah. So that is the first concept about A. That is Allah. Next one is illa. Illa means no. No what? No doshas. So he has no doshas or defects. That is another concept that you understand. And the third one is viruddha. Viruddha means opposite. So when I say he has no doshas, the opposite becomes true, which is gunapurna. That is, he is an abode of infinite auspicious attributes, and he has no defects, and he is sarva vilakshana. He is completely different from anything material that we are aware of. Okay, so that is the first concept that you get from the word A. And Aitareya Upanishad, for example, say aha iti brahma. A means akara is indication of Brahma. Brahma means the supreme being, and we have seen the etymology of Brahma so many times. Okay, so so in that akara, ukara and makara, the akara is already giving you a negative approach of understanding the supreme. Yeah. Now the question is that all to it? If this chap is completely beyond everything, the first question is, why is he completely beyond everything? That is the first question. The second question is, if he is completely beyond everything, how on earth am I going to know about him? Yeah. So how do you square the circle? So immediately what happens is Ukara comes there. After Akara, you get the Ukara. And what does the Ukara tell us? Ukara is an abbreviation of Uttama or Utkrishta. Okay. Uttama means what? The highest, the Purushottama, Uttama. He is the highest. He is highest far beyond any of the material things that you know. And that is the reason why he is Neti Neti Atma, because he is completely beyond anything material, and he is completely beyond the Kshara and the Kutastha Akshara as described in the Gita. So I'm going to invite Sureshji to recite that particular very important verse for us, Suresh.
यस्मात् क्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रतितः पुरुषोत्तमः.
Thank you, Suresh. So, Purushottamaha, Purusha Uttamaha. Okay, that Uttamaha starts with Ukara, and that exactly is the Ukara of Om. Okay, so again, that is the beauty of how we study our Prasthanatrayas. Don't study Prasthanatrayas in isolation. You should always have your Gita with you. You should always have your Upanishad with you, and ideally, you should have your Sutra with you, Brahma Sutra with you, to understand what is it that these Shastras are telling us. So you have the Upanishad Prasthana on your left and you have your Gita Prasthana on the right. So when you take both together, it completely fits in here. Why Ukara is there? Because he is Uttama. So that is a positive approach. So you now have understood that the Supreme Being is Uttama. So from a negative approach, which was the first stage of contemplation, you are now slowly drifting towards a positive approach of accepting that he is Purusha Uttama or Utkrishta, and that is the reason why he is Neti Neti Atma. Okay. Now the big question arises, the second question. If this is an incomprehensible entity and beyond our reach, why waste searching for it? Yeah. So that is a natural question there, isn't it? If it's so big and it is beyond our grasp, then why waste searching for it? This is a common colloquial argument from our materialists and charvakas, and many of our my kids challenge me on this. For example, we have these kind of discussions regularly, and I'm sure yours do as well. So this is our youngsters' problem. If this is so beyond everything, why bother wasting our time? And I also see many adults also asking this question. So Om comes to our immediate rescue there, and you have the Makara there. Okay, the Makara there stands for Mana. Mana means Manam. Manam means Jnanam. Jnanam means to know or knowable. So when you contemplate on Om, it gives you now a much more of a more acceptable, more favorable. It's almost kind to us. It's saying, yeah, he is beyond, he's so big, but you know what? Still, you can know something about him. He is knowable. Yeah. How is he knowable? Let us take Garuna Purana, which gives you a classic example, and Acharya cites this in few places. Pashyanto api na pashyanti mero rupam vipaschitaha. So when I do Badri Yatri, and when I go to Badri and I go to the Himalayas, I can touch the Himalayan mountains and say, oh, I've been to Badri, I've touched Himalayas, I know what Himalayas is. But actually, have I seen every grain, every stone of the Himalayas? Have I hugged the Himalayas? No, I have just touched it and I've come. That exactly is a similar kind of approach about the Supreme. In fact, Gita 15.3 is also talking something about this to us. Veenaji, if you want to recite that for us, please.
न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा.
Thank you, Vinaji. So, narupamasya iha tata upalabhyate na antaho na cha adihi na cha sampratishta. Here, Krishna is saying, look at this whole, this discussion is about the Ashwatha tree, right? If you recall that. And he says, this universe is so vast. Has anybody seen the beginning of the universe, the middle of the universe, the end of the universe? No mundane human being has seen even the every bit of the universe. So the lesson there for us is, if the universe itself we don't know anything about much, but still we go about talking as though we know everything, what about the Supreme who is so beyond and big than the universe itself? So when you take that equation, then we start beginning to understand, yes, we can know about him, but there is an element of limitations to how much we can know about him. So if this is our state of knowledge of the material world, that we do not know every aspect of the material world, what to say about the infinite supreme? And the word makara, the mana or jnana or knowability of Brahman or God is captured by that makara in Om. How? Let us go to the beach. Let us go to the sea. Okay. There is this vast expanse of water. Now you have glasses of different sizes. Okay. Now, I put a statement here, and I'm not sure if you will have a disagreement with me there. I can fill my cup from the sea, but cannot fill the whole sea in my cup and bring it home. Yeah, that's fine. That is a perfectly valid argument. And that exactly is the state of the jivas. Yeah, each jiva, as per its capacity, can touch this Meru mountain called the Vishnu, or can touch the sea, or fill its own cup and become full from its own capacity. Yeah, but it will not be able to extract every component, every water molecule of the ocean, of the sea. So it gives you that idea of, yes, he is beyond matter, he is incomprehensible because he is the highest, but you jivas, as per your capacity, you could have some knowledge about him. So that is that concept of God that Om should bring into us. Yeah. So that concept, which is, it is non-sectarian. This has got nothing to do with Hinduism or any religion. All world's religion view God from this angle, that he is an infinite being, and we can only grasp and understand some aspects of him as per our capacity. So that is what this Om, the abbreviation Om, is actually telling us about a concept of God. Now the next question is, if we can know about this supreme being as per our capacity, and he is knowable, then the question will be, how to know God? How do we know about him? Because we have done this before. We cannot see him through our eyes and so on. So people are the Shruti, for example, we say, na indriyani, na anumanam, vedahi eva enam vedayanti tasmad ahuhu vedaha. So, na indriyani, you can't see with the senses. Na anumanam, you cannot understand him through logic. The only way of understanding is Vedahi eva enam. You can understand him only through the Vedas. Taittiriya Brahmanam also says this. Na avedavin manutetam bruhantam sarva anubhum atmanam samparaye. It comes in Taittiriya Upanishad. So, he who does not know the Vedas cannot know the Supreme. That is a fundamental, that is the fundamental axiom of Sanatana Dharma. So again, the abbreviation Om tells us, initially it gave us a concept of God. Now it is telling us, how are you going to know about God? So how does Akara, Ukara and Makara actually correspond to our Vedas? How does it make sense? Say, the classic teaching is, Akara stands for Padya or Rigveda. Ukara stands for Gadya or Yajurveda. And Makara stands for Gana or Samaveda. Okay. Now, the question is, why? How does Akara, Ukara, and Makara are abbreviations of the Vedas? Okay, so let us look at it in a minute, but I'm going to invite Chitraji to recite a very beautiful verse from chapter 10, verse 22, before we go and deal with that. Chitraji.
वेदानां सामवेदोऽस्मि देवानामस्मि वासवः इन्द्रियाणां मनश्चामि भूतानामस्मि चेतना.
Wonderful, Chitraji. Thank you. So, Vedanam Samavedo Asmi. He said, among the Vedas, I am the Samaveda, or I am in the Samaveda. Okay, let us see why Krishna has said that. In the Gita Prasthana, why Veda Vyasa has said Vedanam Samavedo Asmi. Okay, so now let us go back to our abbreviation for Om. So we said Akara is represents Padya or Rig Veda. How? What is the very first verse of Rig Veda? Agni Mile Purohitam. So it starts with Akara. There you have your answer. It is starting with Akara. Yeah, Rig Veda. What is the very last verse of the Rig Veda? Saha Sati. That is the very last word of Rig Veda. Sati, Ikara. So it starts with Akara and it ends with Ikara. Look at Yajurveda, and I've taken it from Taittiriya Samhita. So as you know, there is Vajashniya Samhita and a Taittiriya Samhita in Yajurveda. So if you look at Taittiriya Samhita, how does it start? It starts with Ishetvor Jetva, Vayavastva, and goes on. So it starts with Ikara. And how does Yajurveda finish? Taittiriya Samhita, how does it finish? Samudro Bandhuhu. It finishes with Ukara. Okay, so there you have your answer for Yajurveda. Yajurveda finishes with Ukara. Okay, so Akara, Rigveda starts with A and Yajurveda finishes with Ukara. So A and U, when abbreviation is given, it means the whole of Rigveda and the Yajurveda are compressed in it. What does that mean? The whole of poems and the whole of prose are compressed in it, in Akara and Ukara. So you can use poetry and prose in the Vedas to understand the Supreme Being. So the next question is, what about Samaveda? So Samaveda is also very interesting. So look at how Samaveda starts. It starts Agna, I can't sing, but Agni Mile Purohitam is basically opened up in Samaveda, and it starts with Agna Yahi, and it goes on. So it starts with Akara. Okay. And how does it finish? It finishes with Dadatu. It finishes with Ukara. Okay. That makes perfect sense, because what is Samaveda? Samaveda is Rig Veda and Yajurveda set in music. Yeah. So it includes what starts with Akara and what finishes with Ukara. So these are all some subtle, I would say esoteric, subtle secret philosophies of abbreviations of Om, and I hope you're able to appreciate this. Now the question is, how does Makara actually signify Samaveda? So I am going to play a bit of Samaveda, and I hope the audio comes through all right. Let's see. So I'm going to stop there. So what is Samaveda? As I said, Samaveda is music. So when I say M, what it means is which is the music. Yeah, so that makara stands for music. Yeah, so music is samaveda. So all of human communication is only when it comes to hearing and listening and reciting, it comes only in three types: poetry, prose, and music. There is nothing outside this. So that is all is the Veda all about. And the abbreviation Om basically captures this. And it says, yes, this chap is unknowable because he is Uttama, but you can know something, and you can know something through the Vedas because that Vedas, Om stands for the Vedas. And of course, in Gita, he said, Vedashta sarve rahameva vedyaha. And in Katha Upanishad, again, the same, sarve vedaha yat padamamananti. So it all makes perfect sense that he is there in the Upanishads, he is there in the Vedas, and every sound and word of the Vedas is only celebrating him. Now, I want to finish this slide with where Chitraji recited so beautifully and said, Vedanam Samavedo Asmi. And why did Krishna say Samaveda, not Rig or Yajurveda? The reason why he has said that is not only to capture the Akara and Ukara of the Rig and the Yajus compressed in Samaveda, but also to bring home the truth that all sounds, music basically is sounds, yeah, all sounds of the universe only celebrates the supreme. It's what we call sarva shabda vachyatva, yeah. And Krishna says that, it's not just the Vedas, guys. Every music, every sound of the universe is talking about me, and that is why that's from the sarva shabda vachyatva of Vedas. Veda Vyasa says, I am in all this. Yeah. So that is the deep philosophy of why that Samavedo Asmi is, but I hope you understand now as to how the abbreviation Om talks about the how we can gain knowledge about the Supreme. Okay, so that is approach 4. I think we got about 12 approaches to cover. So we are finished about 30% of approaching Om. Sorry. The next one, so that tells you once you have had that concept of Om as the abbreviation of Vedas, then this concept of why Om is called Bijakshara mantra then becomes very, very easy for us to understand. You would have said, they even have Akshamala beads, 51 beads. Akshamala classically has 51 beads, and if you want, you can roll over and do your Om meditation using them. Okay. Why is Om called Bijakshara? And we did very briefly last week. Bija is a seed. To know the tree, you need to know the seed. But at the same time, the seed is what becomes this big tree. Similarly, it is this Om abbreviation that eventually becomes the whole of the Vedas that we have just seen in the previous slide. And that is the reason why it is called as a Bijakshara mantra. Okay. Now, look at how many alphabets are there in Sanskrit. So this is classic Vedic Sanskrit. There are 51 alphabets. It starts with Akara and then you have Kshakara. Yeah. Akara to Kshakara are the alphabets in Sanskrit. Okay. Now, what did Varuna say in first? He said, Om iti etad aksharam. So what does that aksharam has got? It's got Akara and Kshakara. So when Varuna said Aksharam, he said from Akara to Kshakara, all the Vedas are celebrating him, and this Vishnu is in all the Vedas. So that is one point there about the Bija. The other point is, we all know Vedas are uncreated and it is eternal. And the Varanas, and we discussed this before, sounds have got two components. One is called Varanatmaka Shabda, and the other one is called Dvanyatmaka Shabda. So Varanas, that component of sound is all pervasive and eternal. Dvanyatmaka is what we do when we use our vocal cords and we make a sound. But before we make a sound, there is an unmanifested component of the sound that is all pervasive in the universe. That is called Varana. And that specific sequence of Varanas is what is Vedas all about. And that specific sequence is eternal and it is always in the mind of the Supreme that comes out in every creation. So again, that eternality is a Kshara. Kshara means that which gets destroyed. Akshara means that which is indestructible. What is indestructible? That thing between Akara and Shakara is indestructible, which is the Vedas, which is the Rig, Yajus, and Sama, which is the only means in which we can know about the Supreme as per our capacity. So now I'm building in another layer of complexity with regards to Akshara as to why Varuna has defined this Brahman as Akshara. So we did this as, in the modern day parlance, you could almost equate a Om to a USB stick, and you can store infinite amount of, you can store as much files as you want based on what your gigabytes is. That is individual soul's capacity. You can store as much as you want. So again, Om iti etad aksharam gives a slightly different angle with regards to what Varuna is asking us to contemplate. Okay. Now, the next question is, okay, fine. God is knowable through the Vedas. But how is God known in the Vedas? Is there a basic formula for mundane jivas like us? Is there a basic formula for us to know who this fellow is? Who is the supreme person is? Every religion says so many things about him. Whom do I trust? What is the basic definition? How is God known in the Vedas? And again, Varuna said, Om. That abbreviation will again give you a definition of what the Supreme Being is known in the Vedas. How? Akara stands for Ananda. Okay? And Makara, as you know, is Mana or Manam, which is Jnana. So it says, you know this fellow as somebody who is blissful, who's got infinite bliss, and he's got infinite knowledge. That is Jnana Ananda Swarupa. So that is the basic way in which you can know the Supreme as Jnanananda Swarupa. Now look at the middle word, Ukara, in between Ananda and Mana. And that Ukara stands for what is called Utkarsha. Utkarsha means that is the highest level. Yeah, you could say infinite. You cannot go anything more than that. Yeah, Utkarsha. Yeah, so you can use it on both sides. He is Utkarsha Ananda, Utkarsha Mana. So that is infinite Jnanananda Swarupa. So that is the fundamental definition of God. If there is one piece of information you want to take home today, it is this, that God is not with four hands and having Shanko Chakra. That is for if you want to do further contemplation. God is not something which is formless. God is not something who's got Nirguna and who is attributeless. Yeah. God is Om, which is Jnanananda Swarupa, Jnanananda Maya. When I say Satchit Ananda Vigraha, that is exactly what it means. When I say Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma of Taittiriya Upanishad, which gives the definition of the Supreme, that is exactly what it means. When Brahma Sutra says Janmadhyasya Yataha, that is what it also means, because we have done this before, but unless somebody has got infinite Ananda, he will not be able to create an infinite universe. Yeah, it is like when we are very happy, we jump and dance. Yeah, similarly, the Vedas say this guy is so much of Ananda and he jumps and dance, which is what the creation of the universe actually is. Yeah, so the definitions of Supreme is directly linked with Jnanananda Swarupa. Okay, so then there is an added complexity layer of our understanding of Om that comes within this. How is God to be known? And Varuna then puts in the next very beautiful word, Om iti etad aksharam idang sarvam. So then he says idang sarvam. Okay, that needs to be watched very carefully. So now, before you understand this verse, and lots of commentaries are out there which talk about all sorts of things, but sometimes I'm amused to see that they have forgotten the fundamental point here. The fundamental point is the commentators are not writing Mandukya Upanishad. Varuna is stating the Mandukya Upanishad. Varuna is actually looking inside, and he is in meditation, and he is looking at his Antaryamin, and he is doing adoration and admiration of the Supreme. That is what Mandukya Upanishad is. It is not to bring some airy-fairy philosophy into this equation. That needs to be understood very clearly. Why do I say that? So our birds are back again. I'd missed them for 3-4 months from Atharva Veda, the Dvasuparana Sayuja Sakaya. Our friends are back. So you have the Brahman bird and you have Varuna, who is the Jiva bird. Okay. Now the question here is, when Varuna is stating the Mundaka Upanishad, is he looking outwards and looking at the world, or is he looking inwards and meditating on the Supreme? The resounding answer there is, he is actually looking inwards and he's actually looking at the Supreme and he's reciting these mantras. And that is where the clue is for what Idam Sarvam actually means. It does not mean that this Om is the world. This Om has transformed into the world, which is an illusion. It just cannot be when you look at the contextual relevance of Mundaka Upanishad, where Varuna is actually looking inwards. So that exactly is those words that I told you. Yetat, Idam, and Ayam. Yetat, that which is very close to me. So this is Varuna. This is Brahman. And Varuna is, initially he said, Om iti etad aksharam. This fellow who is very close to me, he is Om. Now he is saying Idang Sarvam. Now he is saying this fellow who is in front of me, this thing right in front of me, I am in deep contemplation. He is called Sarvam. Yeah. So he says he is not only called Aksharam, he is also called Sarvam. Yeah. So that is the contextual prakarana of the Mundaka Upanishad. This has got nothing to do to claim that this whole world is Brahman and that this is a superimposition and the world is an illusion. It's got no contextual relevance. So sometimes I get very amused, but it's up to our friends how they want to interpret this. So let's look at Idam Sarvam. I've said Idam is, he's looking at the Supreme and he's saying, Idam, you are Sarvam. Why has he said you are Sarvam? Okay. And again, I come back to it again. When you study the Upanishads, use your Sutra and you use your Gita Prasthana. Use the Gita and the Sutra together and study it, rather than having your own hypothesis and building a castle on thin air. Look at our Gita Prasthana, what it has said and what definition it has actually told us. In fact, if you look at Gita, the word Sarvam comes in 14 different places. And I put that here for you, but I've taken 11th chapter, verse 40. And I hope Sheila ji is there in the audience, and hopefully she'll be able to recite the 40th verse of 11th chapter, which actually tells us categorically what Sarvam is. Sheila ji, are you there? Yes, you are there.
नमः पुरस्तात् अथ पृष्ठतस्ते नमोऽस्तु ते सर्वत एव सर्व अनन्तवीर्यामितमिक्रमं त्वं सर्वं समाप्नोषि ततोऽसि सर्वः.
Beautiful, Shilaji. Thank you very much. So this chapter, what is happening? Our Arjuna is looking at the Vishwarupa and he is perplexed. You know, I am bowing to you in the front. I am bowing to you from the back. I am doing namaskara to you from all directions because you are everywhere. You have pervaded everywhere. And which direction am I going to do my namaskara? I'm going to do namaskara from all direction. And he says this last line, which is so important. He actually says, why are you called Sarvaha? You know, Sarvam Sam Apnoshi Tato Asi Sarvaha. Okay, he says, Sarvam Sam Apnoshi. Apnoshi means pervaded. He says, you have pervaded everywhere. Sarvam Sam Apnoshi Tato Asi Sarvaha. That is why you are known as Sarvaha. So Vedavyasa categorically is telling us that Sarvaha is actually a name of the Supreme. Yeah. Now look at Vishnu Sahasranama, 4th line. It starts with Sarvaha, Sharvaha, Shivaha, Stanuhu. So it is actually given a name Sarvaha to Vishnu. Yeah. So we should never forget these two mountains of Mahabharata, Gita and Vishnu Sahasranama. So when you read the Upanishads, look out for those words and look for what Gita is saying, what Vishnu Sahasranama is saying. And when you look at that, it's very clear that Sarvam there is a name of the Supreme. He is pervaded everywhere. And I told you before, pervasion. He is also called Brahman because Bruhanto hi asmin gunaha iti Brahman. That is that which has pervaded. Pervaded what? pervaded in time, pervaded in place, and pervaded in guna. So those are all the three types of pervasion that you have. This supreme being has got complete pervasion in all the three aspects. So that describes his purnatva. So he is paripurna. So that is the literal meaning of sarvam. Sarvam means paripurna, or all pervasion in time, space, and guna. So that is what Varuna is saying here. You are idam sarvam. This chap who are in front of me, you are sarvam, and I celebrate, I adore you. You are sarvam. Okay. Why is that important? Because we cannot just pluck idam sarvam out of this equation, which is called Mandukya Upanishad first verse, and build a airy-fairy philosophy. Because the question there is, God is everything or God is in everything? So that is a question for us to think about. Yeah. So whilst I'm going to sip some water, I want people to contribute. Do we think God is everything or God is in everything? What do we think here? Any opinions, please?
Is it both, Madhu?
Okay, so yeah, so both is interesting, Chitraji. I will park it there. I'll come back to it. Anybody has got any other views?
I think God is in everything.
God is in everything. Okay, thank you, Ajit. Anybody else has a different view or would go with what Chitraji and Ajit has said?
God is beyond.
God is beyond. So what do you mean? Was that Pragnesh? So what do you mean, Pragnesh, when you say God is beyond? Is he not in his creation?
Is neither creator nor creation nor creating.
So
or everything. Or everything. But beyond comprehension. We were learning earlier that beyond comprehension.
Okay. Right. So yeah, so you got a view there. Thank you for that. So we are going to stick to what the classical Vedic teaching here is. The Vedic teaching here is, so Chitra, to answer your question, we remember we did a Taittiriya Upanishad, one of the verses, Tat Srishtva Tadeva Anupravishat, Tat Anupravishya Satcha Tyatcha Abhavat. So what describes about creation, and we described about how a pot is created by a potter and how the universe is created by the creator, where we said this creator creates the universe but also enters into it and gives its reality, its volition, and its objecthood of knowledge. So those are the three things that Brahman does. So he enters into his creation, but I also accept from one angle that God is everything. So for example, we say in our colloquial language, we say, you are everything. Yeah. So for example, in India, it's very common. Somebody goes to the government office for a particular job to be done. And what is this fellow goes? He'll go and bow to him, sir, you are everything. Please get this done for me. You are everything. So that is used even in our colloquial language. Basically, it indicates he is all powerful. So if you say God is all powerful from a colloquial sense, you will say you are everything. That is fine. The other way of saying is Raja Rashtram. Yeah, so that is another famous example used in Shastras, Raja Rashtam. Because the king owns everything and is in control of everything, you equate him to everything. Yeah. So from that perspective, that if he is an independent controller and he owns everything, if you say he is everything, that is fine. Now, this is where the Tattvamasi concept comes in. There are 9 different interpretations of Tat. Saptasu Pratama, 9 different interpretations of Tat. Tat there in that. One thing is, because he is a controller of everything. Yeah. So if God is a controller and owns everything, then you might as well say he is everything. From that, it is from that metaphorical sense, I agree with you, Chitra. But if you say God is everything, then you are saying God has become a jada. God has actually transformed himself into a stone and a stool and whatever else that is non-living thing. So how can a sentient being transform himself into a non-sentient entity? So these are all arguments that come in philosophy. That is for another day. But I agree with you in one angle that God is everything and God is also in everything. Okay, so we make our pravesha to the very next verse. So he said, Om iti etad aksharam idang sarvam. Then Varuna is saying, Tasya upavyakyanam. Tasya means about that. About whom? About that sarvam, about that aksharam, and about that om. Tasya upavyakyanam. Upa means upapannam. Vyakyanam means I shall explain to you, or I am going to admire and adore you in great detail. About the three words that I've used, Om, Aksharam, and Sarvam. Sarvam as something that has pervaded everywhere. And I'm going to give a Upapanna Vyakyanam. That is, I'm going to give an excellent explanation and I'm going to celebrate you even better. And he goes on and says, Bhuta Bhavat Bhavishyad Iti Sarvam Omkara Eva Yachanya Trikala Titam Tadapi Omkara Eva. These are amazing verse, the next lines, and they open up in various angles, Bhuta, Bhavad, and Bhavishyat. So we know what Bhuta is, Bhuta Kala, Bhavishyat Kala, past, present, and future. So he immediately gives you this idea about when he said Sarvam, that he is pervaded everywhere. He then qualifies that, Varuna, pervaded where? In what time angles? He initially talks about past, present, and future. Then he will talk about even beyond time you are pervading. So that is how Echanya Trikala Atita. Kala Atitaha. Yeah. So he will say in this creation how you are, and even beyond creation how you are, and he celebrates him. So what we will do in the coming next week is probably we will take this verse, Bhuta Bhavat Bhavishyat, and then link it up with Omkara. Because Akara, Ukara, and Makara essentially talk about past, present, and future. Yeah, so again you can see how they are linked with each other, because as I said before, we all want to be munis. Yeah, manana shilaha, and when we recite Om, we should be doing manana about all this, exactly how Varuna did, not at his level, but at least to some level we should be able to comprehend the significance of Om. So tasya upavyakyanam. So we are going to deal with how Varuna, let us not forget, I am not interested in any acharyas or whatever their bhashyas. What we should be interested is what Varuna has got to tell about the Supreme Being, because he is in deep meditation and he's looking at the Supreme Being and what kind of upavyakyanam he is going to be doing. We're going to deal with it in the next class. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for listening. Krishna Pranamastu.
I have a question.
Yeah. So to open the questions, I think my better half Jamuna has got a question. So I will hear and then say, yeah, carry on.
You said God is not made of anything material. So what is he made of?
Okay. So yeah. So what I don't know whether you heard it. So Jamuna was saying, if God is not made of, if God is not material, then what is he made of? Okay, so shall I open this up for discussion as to, it'd be nice to have different views of that. If God is not material, then what on earth is he made of and what are we doing here? So what is the views there? Yeah, Pragnesh.
Like there are waves in ocean made from the same water, but you can say the waves are ocean or ocean and waves are same. Same way the world, the Maya and what para and apara all are same, and therefore God is either everywhere or nowhere, or is a creator or creation or creating.
Okay, that's fine. So that's it's a controversial opinion, Pragnesh, to be very fair to you. This whole concept of Maya is controversial. There is no one view about this. Um, are you saying if the question there was, what is the nature of the Supreme? Are you saying that he is an absolute zero? Then he is completely zero. Is that what you're implying from what you've said?
It is very difficult because I am newcomer, so I haven't heard before, but I have thoroughly enjoyed. I must congratulate, and I am very grateful that I group. And but it's very difficult because it's like atom and cosmic theory, if you want to put in a scientific parlance. So it is anu, as we are called in our scriptural text. So from anu, so from nothing to infinite. That's what I would understand.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so that's fine, Pragnesh. Thank you for your contribution. Anybody else, please? I thought somebody was switched it on. Any
Madhu, can I have a go?
Yes, please, Deval.
I think that is the difficulty, isn't it? We are all trying here to try and understand God from the material world. So how can we know what he's made of? Because we will never be able to comprehend it. So these are all adjectives, but it doesn't tell us the real thing.
Okay, anybody else?
Hello, can I come in?
Yeah, please introduce yourself. I can't see.
My name is
Narayan Rao. Yes, G. Yes, come on. Hello. Yes.
Yes, hello. I was thinking there used to be it can't be, you can't define God, but anyway, a description is sometimes people give it a Satchidananda, Sat, Chit and Ananda.
Thank you, Narayan Rao ji. Yeah, thank you very much for the contribution. I completely agree with you that we can only, so as Devalji mentioned, yes, from our material things we can't understand, and that is our reason why our rishis have given our Vedas for us to experiment with this and try and understand this to some extent based on our capacities. So Deval, you will only know what you are and what God is only when you're self-realized or only in moksha.
Yes, that I agree.
Until that point, you are not going to know how you are going to appreciate the supreme being. But the Vedas give us a clue, they give us an idea. They say the basic qualifications for human beings to understand the supreme, as how Narayan Rao ji mentioned, is he is Jnananandamaya, he is Satchitananda, he is Jnananandamaya. So in fact, Badarayana in Vedanta Sutra, he gives 4 minimum qualities of the supreme that we mundane jiva should meditate on. He says Sat Chit Ananda Atma. Those are the 4 essential acts that the Vedas are telling us. So in that sense here, so what is the Jnanananda Swarupa? Is it material? That's what Jamuna was asking. If you are saying Jnanananda Swarupa, what is bliss? How do you describe bliss and how do you describe knowledge? Like how we described last week, how do you describe a taste of a coffee? Only by experiencing it. You cannot write it on a paper. So similarly, you experience the supreme and his nature. You cannot actually describe it. In fact, Upanishads, in again, it comes in Atharva Upanishad and it also comes in Kena Upanishad, where they say, he who thinks that he knows God does not know.
Knows no God.
Okay.
Yes.
But he who knows he does not know actually knows. That exactly is what the Bible also says. If you look at it, he who knows he does not know actually knows. Yeah, directly plucked from our Upanishads and placed in the Bible. Yeah, so that's how I would describe that. Yeah, anybody else wants to contribute here or any other questions?
You'd mentioned
Ajit, yes.
Sorry, you'd mentioned earlier that I think this was some time ago when you said that we need to have our Jnana Chakshu open, which is probably what you meant by the self-realization that when we would be able to see God. So if we think that that's a transcendental a sense organ, so I presume that's what we would then mean by saying that God would be transcendental, that it's beyond excess with material. Even if you say energy is, I presume, is still a material concept. So I would presume that it'll be beyond energy. So it's beyond all these things. So so you could say that they are transcendental qualities. Now, to define transcendental quality, I would presume that's where what you said is that it's only when you experience it that you will be able to understand it.
Yeah. So thanks, Ajit. Perfectly put, because that's what the Shastras also said. We discussed about this opening up of your third eye, which is your Jiva Swarupa. So your Jiva Swarupa is non-material. Yeah, there is your answer. So a non-material Jiva Swarupa can only see the non-material God. Yeah, until you reach that point, you're not going to be able to see him. That seeing him is called aparoksha jnana in our Shastras, that you are able to see him. That is, your Jiva Swarupa sees this Antaryamin inside. So that is called Aparoksha Jnana. At that point, you will experience him. The Shastras categorically reassure that will happen. So what we should be doing is, as there is this Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles start with one step and it ends with one step. So we have just taken the first step in that journey. So in the first step itself, I think it will be a bit premature for us to say, I want to see God. The enthusiasm is great, but practically it is not going to happen after having taken the first step. You need to take the next 999 step, and then you open up your third eye, and then you see the chap there. Now,
Yeah, if I may add,
Varuna,
Mohan
just on
here.
that related note, Varuna was an Aparoksha Jnani. All the devatas, the Abhimani devata concept in the Vedic pantheons, yeah, all the devatas are described as Aparoksha Jnani. And Varuna is looking at the Supreme Being and describing this Upanishad is what we are told. So if this Upanishad is part of the Vedas and Vedas are Aparushya and supremely authoritative, we need to accept the truth in the Vedas. So one approach here is have that Shraddha, have that faith in the scriptures, and you experiment yourself and see whether you find the truth. And when you have that third eye opening, you will actually experience that supreme being in yourself. That is the resounding declaration of all the Upanishads and all the rishis.
Madhuji, Mohan here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please. Yeah, Mohan. Yes, please.
Yeah, so there is this interesting thing that Tulsidas said that जाना ही सोई जे देव जनाओ अजानत तुम्हें तुम्हें हो जाए. So it basically knowing, I mean the word knowing also is complicated for us, right? What do we really mean by knowing? But what the dimension Tulsidas brings is that only that person knows whom he wants to know. So he expresses, then you know. So it's actually not for us to know, it's for him to express. And the second part, he says that once he expresses and then you know, then you become him. So it's no more about you knowing him, then you become him. So you are not distinguishable now, right? So it's challenging. So I never comprehended this, that so I'm at a point where I am thinking, contemplating on this concept of knowing itself. So it's up to him to express himself. Once he does, he does. It's like kripa, right? So when kripa happens. If it doesn't happen, you keep seeking. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah. Thanks, Mohan. So you picked up an important point in there about divine grace. Yeah, that prasada as it's called. So at every stage of our journey, you of course need the divine grace to push us in the right direction. I think that's what you're alluding to there from what Tulsidas has mentioned. Thank you very much. Yeah. Anybody else?
Sorry, Madhu, just one other bit on this one is it's just trying to think about this in a slightly different way. I think the problem is when you're trying to explain to somebody who is trying to understand this, or so I mean, previously you said that you should not be trying to describe this to somebody who is not capable of understanding it. So I presume that if it's somebody who's challenging you to say, okay, if you cannot see or you do not know what your ultimate goal is, how do you know that you're going to get there? Whereas people who are already on that route know that they understand that there is something that I'm going to look for. So I presume, I don't know if I've managed to put myself across clearly, but to say that it's more of the challengers are the ones who will struggle to convince with this argument to say that you will only know something when you taste it, or you will only know something when somebody expresses it to you. Whereas the ones who already know about it believe that that exists, so we don't need that extra belief. I mean, I don't know if I came across.
Yeah, sure, Ajit. I think it goes both way. When Krishna says Shraddhavan labate jnanam, yeah, so that is how you have to start. You have to have that Shraddha first. Otherwise, you will not get jnanam at all in the first place. So you need to have that firm faith with regards to your approach. If you don't have a firm faith and you're an agnostic, fine. Initially, we are all agnostics. Like I remember in my college days, we were all agnostic and almost rebellious of what was happening around us. But eventually you come around as you journey through life, that you then start getting that shraddha about, these things must exist. So that is the first one. Krishna has made it very clear. The fellows who think I don't exist, yeah, the fellows who thinks I don't exist or I am Krishna, those kind of views, they're all going to fall into the deepest pits. Katha Upanishad, Nachiketa, I would urge folks, somebody who is describing that he or she is going to become God, good luck to them. But they can go and approach Katha Upanishad, the dialogue between Nachiketa and Yama, where Yama clearly says, those chaps who think either I don't exist, or I don't have any attributes, or I have only few attributes, or that there is a difference between me and my avataras. So these fellows, they will fall down very rapidly, like how the water falls when there is a heavy storm, the water flows from the top of the hill down at a rapid rate. Like that, they are going to fall down and they go to the Andatamas. This is not me who is saying this. This is Yama saying that to Nachiketa in some beautiful verses. Over 2 verses, he describes that. So again, I come back to this. We have to take the Upanishads as they are available to us and not pluck a few words and come up with a hypothesis. So I would put this across. If Nachiketa is being told this from Yama, I would take Yama's words very seriously and take a very guarded approach there. Yeah. So what I was trying to get at is, yes, you're absolutely right. You need to have the firm faith. Without faith, there is no scope. Yeah. To have that faith is what the adhikari is all about. That eligibility is to have that faith. After having gone through life and you want to ask that key questions, why the hell am I suffering? Yeah, where have I come and where am I going? So those kind of existential questions, until you reach that point and you ask that existential questions, you will never become an adhikari. And once you become an adhikari, that means that you've automatically got the shraddha to progress in that direction. And the more and more you read and get that yatartha jnana. So that is the first step. Get the yatartha jnana, which means the right knowledge. Once you get the yatartha jnana and then bring your devotion into that equation, and then bring your karma yoga into that equation, then you will make that journey. And eventually the Shastras tell us at some point, it may not be in this life, it may be at some life in the future, you will be able to experience that Supreme.
But Madhu, this is Harish. It's somewhat interconnected, though, right? Because without Shraddha, you can't really gain knowledge, and without knowledge, it's hard to get Shraddha. So you almost have to interweave the two as you do your sadhana.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree fully, Harish. Very well put. Yes, they're interweaved. You can, yes, but both have to be there. Yeah,
right.
And again, even for that, you would argue you need to have the divine grace. That even for that to happen, nothing is everything needs to have the divine grace for it to happen.
One question I had, going back to Jamuna's original question on how do you comprehend something that's beyond the 5 bhutas. Now, is the avatar concept make that a little easier for us, or is that going to be a separate discussion on its own? Because
the avatar aspects will help tremendously, Harish. Even in fact, hopefully next week or the following week, we will talk about how this avatara concepts of the Lord actually is intertwined in the Omkara Upasana.
Okay.
Yeah. So akara, so that is when you look at the four components of Om: akara, ukara, makara, and nada. Okay, so there is a contemplation of the avatars of the Supreme: Krishna avatara, Rama avatara, Narasimha avatara, and Varaha avatara. So those are the 4 avatars that link up with akara, ukara, makara, and nada. And why is that interesting? We'll deal with that at that point, because there's a whole lot of discussions about Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, Jaya, Vijaya, and how that all links up with Om and so on. So hopefully that will be an interesting. Yeah. So avatara is not material, Harish. Jamuna was just saying avatara is not material. Again, Kataka Upanishad is said, he who thinks avatara is different from the Supreme, he who thinks that avatara is a material form and it is not, it is different from the Supreme, he is totally misunderstood and he is going to fall down to Andatamas.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that was a bit of a misunderstanding. So in your view, or I guess in the scriptural view, avatars should have no, they don't have any constraints or any limitations. That
So the Brihadaranyaka statement, Purna Madaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Avasishyate, is categorically talking about that the Mula Avatara of the Supreme is infinite, the Avatara forms of the Supreme is infinite, the Vyuha forms of the Lord is infinite. From the Mula Avatara goes back to the, from the Avataras, it goes to the Mula forms, that is also infinite. From the Mula, you take something, it is also infinite. So the Purna Madaha, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad verses purely talk about the infinitude of all forms of the Supreme. It has got nothing to do with saying from the infinite Brahman, the infinite universe has come up. It is it just is irrelevant in that context of the Upanishads. It is talking about Mula forms, Avatara forms, Vyuha forms, they are all infinite. Who on earth said universe is infinite? So there is, if you take that view, there is a view which says from the infinite Brahman, the infinite universe comes about. Who said universe is infinite? So I'm just putting it as an argument there that that Brihadaranyaka Upanishad mantra talks about this, Harish, that every aspect of the Supreme, there is, as you know, there is a Nakastuti, yeah, of Acharyas, which celebrates the nail of Narasimha. And it says the nail of the Narasimha is non-different from Narasimha, and it is infinitely blissful and full of knowledge, describing the nail of the Narasimha Avatara. Yeah, so there is no difference.
And is this also, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but is this also one that's subject to some philosophical controversies and differences of opinion about what avatars, what constitutes avatars and everything else?
Yeah, that's true. I think the fundamental issue here is, this whole bipartite classification of Brahman into Saguna Brahman and Nirguna Brahman itself is controversial. Yeah.
Right.
So for some schools, Nirguna Brahman means he doesn't have material qualities, and Saguna Brahman means he has infinite non-material qualities. Yeah. And for other schools, Nirguna Brahman is an absolute sunya, zero, purposeless, static entity who does nothing and is not even aware of himself. And Saguna Brahman is an illusion, not really exist. So there itself, you have a different point of view. So without getting into the controversies of that, all that I'm going to say here is it depends on the individual nature of the jivas. Yeah, what I was going to say there is there are infinite jivas, right? At the same time, God has given infinite philosophies for the jivas. Based on their natures and capacities, each jiva will follow a particular type of philosophy and reach its destination. Yeah, this is the greatness of Sanatana Dharma. It is 100% democratic. Nobody is going to enforce a particular doctrine on anybody. Based on your attributes, what your jiva swabhava is, you find a particular school of philosophy appealing, no problem, go ahead and do it. Yeah, so that is how I would look at it. But yes, you are right, there itself there is a fundamental problem. Nirguna Brahman versus Saguna Brahman, what is the definition? There is only one group, one school of Vedanta that believes in this concept of a Sunyavada. It is a type of Sunyavada of Buddhism. There is only one school of Vedanta that believes in that, whereas the rest of the schools of Vedanta and all other religions of the world, they don't believe in that approach. Yeah, I would think about that seriously, and of course whatever appeals to you, you can do yourself.
One more concept, Madhuji, about avatar, since we mentioned, we always say, even colloquially, we say that in avatar, Bhagwan is doing Leela. So that word Leela itself is something very interesting to understand, because the way whoever is at that point of time experiences the avatar is through Leela. And avatar's Leela is not avatar himself, right? So he is creating something for us to experience. So it is probably giving us a window and an opportunity to experience out of compassion. It's So avatar probably needs to be seen in that dimension, that what we said is that his bliss, right? So avatar is a way for God to offer his bliss. And even when in our times an avatar is not there, at least we have that Leela to go back to. So therefore we can recite, sing and praise based on that Leela. So at least try to connect through that. So, I mean, one is, of course, we can question, but the other is that we can take the blessing as is and
Sure.
try to make best use of that.
Yeah, thank you, Mohan. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. And let's not forget the Bimbarupa Paramatma who is inside everybody is also his avatar. It's his Amsa. Yeah, it's one of his Amsas. He's there. He is no non-different from, just because he is inside you, he is not existing in Vaikuntha. The form that is inside you and the one that is in Vaikuntha are exactly the same. Yeah. So this is what is called as Achintya Adbhuta Shakti of the Supreme. So that's an entirely different discussion. Anyway, yeah, thanks, Mohan, for that. Yeah. If we don't have any other discussions, shall we call it a day, Sudarshan? I think Sudarshan is gone. No, he's there. Okay.
Sorry, Madhu. He's just on a different another meeting actually. So yeah, if you want to conclude the meeting, that's absolutely fine. Sorry, Madhu. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Thank you very much. So we'll meet up next week. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Madhu.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhu.
Thanks, Madhu.
Thank you, Madhu.